when you get women together and you remove all the competitiveness and all of the wounded sort of feminine energy where there might be gossip or bitchiness or, and you get women together to just hear each other and listen to each other and provide wisdom to each other and support each other, like magic happens, healing happens.
Welcome to Your Reconnect, the podcast that proves that life doesn't have to end at 40, 50, or even 60, because when it comes to living your best life, age is just a number.
Hey everyone, it's Michelle, your host, and welcome back to another episode of Your Reconnect. Now, I don't tend to do this, but if you're new to the podcast, welcome. Thank you so much for finding my show. Love that. If you have time, please go back and listen to past episodes. I have had the privilege of interviewing something like, I would say, 65 different women. Now, that is a lot of stories of wisdom, of learning. It's just made such a difference to my life. And I know that it has to yours as well, because I do get so many lovely messages from listeners saying how that one episode went on to change their day or their life or change their perspective on something that they've been dealing with. So, how amazing is that? And that's why I do what I do. Now, on today's episode, I'm so excited because I've got my really good friend, Joe, who's joining me, and we're finally sharing something that we've been working on for a while behind the scene. Now, it started with a few conversations, as it does, between women about how much we miss proper connection, not just the surface stuff of how are you, how are the kids, what's been happening. I'm talking about the real deep stuff. The stuff that makes you exhale, that makes you feel like, wow, I was just able to share something with someone else and it's just made me feel so much better. So we've decided to start a women's circle. It's gentle, it's grounded, and by all means, it's not woo woo, it's just a space to be. And in this chat, we talk about why we're doing it, what it looks like, and why creating this kind of space for women feels more important than ever right now. So if you're feeling a little bit disconnected or like you need something just for you, this might be exactly what your soul needs. Joe, I love when friends come on the podcast. It's like having a chat, but, I guess in a public space. But you and I, we met 15 years ago when our little girls, who one's about to be 20, met at preschool. And you and I became instant friends, didn't we? And that connection of a new friend, like I just recently moved back from overseas to sit, back into Sydney, and you had moved to a new place in Sydney. So, we just connected, our girls connected, and ever since we've remained connected, which has been really nice. But what I love is that you have gone on this amazing journey, and so have I, kind of in different spheres, I would say. Yours being meditation, that turned into teaching meditation, coaching as well, self love, and me into podcasting. But I think the common goal between you and I is to empower people, to give people a space where they can feel seen and heard. And you do that through meditation, and I do that through sharing stories. And what I love is that you and I have been wanting to do something, collaborate for a really long time, and excited. It's really exciting that we're actually forming a women's circle, because we feel between your experience and my experience and our wisdom, we need to come together and give women a space where, if they like, they can share, a space that they can be seen and heard and held. So, welcome. That was a big intro, but yeah, I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. And, I just want to echo that it was such a beautiful meeting that we had. And when you think about 15 years ago, we were still so young ourselves and just navigating motherhood. And we had these two little girls who just connected at preschool and have been friends ever since. And they've had such a beautiful friendship. what we've been really fortunate with is that you and I both clicked and we're able to support each other as women as we're raising both of our daughters. And, you and I both have two daughters. So it always worked really well to spend time together. And, it's just a lot of feminine energy in both of our households. And so, I'm so grateful for you throughout the years to have been that person there to, go through motherhood with as we're sort of journeying what that means and how to maintain our own integrity and our own love of ourselves and what we want to do with our lives, and also be able to raise these kids to figure that out for themselves as well. So it has been, and we've had so many beautiful holidays together and, just really been able to connect. And I think that one thing that we have always shared, which has been probably, I would say, the glue and the beauty of our friendship, is that we're both really good listeners. Like, we both naturally end up in spaces and friendships with people where we naturally end up coaching people or supporting people. It's just who we are, it's what we're here to do, and people feel safe in our company, they feel safe in our presence. And, I think that when you and I first met, we didn't really realize that about ourselves. We just kind of naturally fell into those roles with friendships and with family. And, but over the years, what has happened is I think we've both started to see that that is our strength. That is a strength that we both have. And we wouldn't necessarily have ever called ourselves coaches or podcasters or storytellers, but the reality is that that's what it has become, because that is naturally what we love to do and how we show up in the world. It's so fascinating to look back on the journey and see now it really makes total sense that we're wanting to come together to hold space for women, because as women and wives and mothers, we've spent so much time supporting each other. It feels like now, we can actually bring all the stuff that we've learned and the work that we've been doing together to hold space in those circles that I'm really excited to start.
I feel exactly the same. I think back to the women that we were so young, such a long time ago, and knee deep into raising kids and trying to find who we were essentially in all of that. And I love that we have done that. And I think you probably started the journey before I did, becoming enlightened by what you're doing now. And I think it comes to down to watching others, observing what people are doing. That also encourages others to do that, to step into that unknown and wonder, well, what's there for me? And bringing it back to women's circles, I think that's what it gives other women. It gives each other that sense of support, encouragement, and just somewhere that you can actually, if you want, talk about how you feel, ask the questions, because if we don't have each other, how can we do that? Honestly. And before we jumped on, I actually wanted to find out the history of women's circles. And it's really interesting. I'm just going to read it. Women's circles is an ancient practice. Long before modern life pulled us in a million directions, women came together in community around fires, under moonlight, in kitchens, in courtyards, to share stories, pass on wisdom, grieve, celebrate, and support each other through life's transitions. These gatherings weren't events, they were essential, a natural rhythm, a place where women of all ages had a role, whether as a storyteller, caretaker, or a wise elder. The circle symbolized equality. There was no head of the table, no hierarchy, just a shared space and deep listening. How beautiful is that? And when I read that, I thought, I would have loved something like that all those years ago. Imagine. I mean, when you're going through the different phases of life, you tend to gravitate to people who are going through a similar stage. But can you imagine if we had a space where you would have had someone that was that step ahead of you to actually hold space for you and say, you know what, Michelle, I get you. I've been there, or let me pass on my wisdom to you and how much you can get out of that. I absolutely would have loved a space like that.
Oh, and I'm just getting goosebumps as we're talking about this. So there's definitely something in this. And getting back to the circle thing that you were just talking about, which is so beautiful, you know, what I find really interesting about patriarchy is that before patriarchy, before it became really more of a man's world, it was a really balance, or the understanding is that there was a balance between masculine and feminine. And at some point the balance became out of place. And there's a belief that was largely because of agriculture, right? So bear with me on this. It's an interesting thing. So prior to agriculture, you had people living in communities. You had people hunting and gathering, supporting each other as a community. And so women would be supporting women in birthing children, in menstruating, in raising kids, in creating that circle of love and nourishment that a family and a community needs. And the masculine would be more about hunting, providing, supporting, protecting. And of course, the roles were intertwined at times. You would potentially have masculine supporting, kids and women hunting at various times if they're not giving birth or menstruating or whatever. But predominantly, there was this balance between masculine and feminine and the roles that we took on based on our biology and our physiology. Once we started moving into agriculture, what started to happen was land was broken up into pieces, and you had to own a piece of land and cultivate that land to survive. And so, I'm reading this book called Sex at Dawn, actually, which is this is where I'm learning all of this stuff. Where once you had to have your little plot of land and you had to protect it and you had to farm it and you had to make a living off it and sustain a family off it, patriarchy really took hold because, um, let's say, men, the masculine, would be working the land. You would be having a family with the feminine, with a woman, and that masculine needed to know that he was only feeding the mouths that were his kids, right? So if everyone is living in a community and there's not necessarily marriage and systems, and you've got no claim on someone as your partner because everyone's just supporting each other, suddenly you've got a claim on a partner, a claim on a woman, a claim on these kids, and a claim on this land, and you have to protect it at all costs for survival. So women became very isolated suddenly, isolated in a nuclear family. Everyone became isolated. By the way, patriarchy hasn't only affected women negatively, it's also affected men. Yeah. So, suddenly you've got women are, when the wounded masculine takes over, women are much more weak and able to be abused and vulnerable, which unfortunately is what kind of happened as the years and the centuries went by. But long story short, it used to be that women weren't isolated like that, and that women would support each other through birthing, through, going through the phases and the rites of passage in life, through raising kids, through being the grandmothers and the wise healers. So
Mm.
women, the difference between the masculine and feminine being that the masculine is the protector of the physical world and the provider of the physical world. The feminine is the protector and the provider of the intuitive world and the spiritual world. So a woman would lead a man to spirituality and knowing himself, and a man would protect a woman in the physical world. And so women are very, very connected to spirituality, like naturally connected to each other, connected to everything around us in community. We actually hold and house the baby that gestates inside of us, the soul that lands in that body. we're birthing on into the physical world. So we're naturally very intuitive, very connected, and really need each other to navigate spirituality, understanding ourselves, leading ourselves through the physical world in an emotional way. Whereas for men, there is emotion and there is spirituality, but that's not so much their strength. We have our different strengths. And so I love unpacking the whole masculine feminine thing because when you think about it, women are not meant to be competing with each other. We're not meant to be in our masculine energy, which is, provide, protect, rise in the big, physical world, let's call it companies and, all of these things that we find women are in these big masculine roles. We can be if we want to be, but the way that society has gone is that we're being forced into those roles to be able to protect ourselves and have our own money and our own survival if something was to go wrong. But deep in our hearts, and I can't speak for every woman, but I'm sure that most women can relate. Deep in our hearts, we really, what comes naturally to us is nurturing and caring and loving and being able to hold space for people. And we know just through being women and having related to women all of our lives that when you get women together, and you remove all the competitiveness and all of the, wounded sort of feminine energy where there might be gossip or bitchiness or, and you get women together to just hear each other and listen to each other and provide wisdom to each other and support each other. Like magic happens, healing happens when women get together and really support each other. And so I think we're going to see the rise of women's circles. I think we already are because the feminine is really coming online a lot more now, and women are looking for that exchange of energy with each other. And I'll just finish off by just saying I think that the more that this happens, the more women come together and heal together as feminine circles, the more we will be able to step into our power to be healing the world at a more macro level. If we're connecting at the micro level in our little local circles and supporting each other, then naturally that's going to ripple out to the macro level to the world. If we look around, it's all very masculine. We just need more of that feminine connection. So I'm excited to bring,
Yeah. Same, same. I think it's so essential. And I guess I've been fortunate to come across some very empowering, kind women in my life. And honestly, it's made all the difference to me. And I talk about this a lot, how by connecting with my kinesiologist, I felt that was something for someone that I didn't even know. She gave me so much empowerment just by holding space for me. And I think you and I, once I went on that journey myself, and you and I were able to really talk about what that really meant, I could just see how it is so important as women to give that to each other. And it doesn't mean that you need to go and pay for that. That's where I think,
yeah,
go to a therapist or whatever it is. I think if we can, as a society of women, give that to each other, how special is that? And like you said, like, just there shouldn't be any competition. And this is where I think we're going wrong. And I hope that as the world evolves, as our children become older, that our daughters can be those women that support and empower each other. And I think you're right. There is definitely a shift. I think more women are being open to this because there is a need. I think a lot of us are feeling very low, very flat, very lost. So when we thought about this idea, I thought, how amazing is it that we can offer a space where you can just come, and honestly, you don't even have to share your story if you don't want to, but just by sitting there and listening to someone else and listening to yourself and myself, talk about our experience. And I have been privy to a lot of stories now. So I feel like I've gained a lot of wisdom from the women that I've spoken to. And I really want to share that as well. And just for women to feel not alone, like let's be there for each other. Let's support each other in a really lovely, sacred space. So excited about this new journey that we're doing together.
Yeah, it's really interesting how the universe works, that we've sort of identified this need and this passion within ourselves and each other. And, as you say, you've been podcasting and meeting incredible women who have come through really big journeys and are, in that midlife kind of range where the wisdom really does start to flow. We've had so much life experience now. We've either raised children or we've had big jobs or both. And, the women back in the day were the healers and the witches and the wise ones. And under patriarchy, that was, threatening to patriarchy, that women could be so powerful and so able to heal people naturally through love or through herbs or through, just wisdom. And so I think every woman sort of holds that energy and is able to tap back into it at some point in their lives. And midlife tends to be a really natural point when we're just going through menopause. We give less fucks about things. We don't care about what, excuse my language, we don't care so much about what people, think about us anymore, that we're really able to show up for others. And so I think with our women's circles, it's going to be about inviting women of all ages, whether you're in your early 20s, early 30s, early 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. We've all got these stages of life, and women really do go through a lot more stages of life, I think, than men, just given that we are the reproducers. So helping each other through that, and also just to point out that you've been podcasting and connecting and gathering incredible stories that are helpful for women that you'll be able to share. I've been teaching meditation for many years and now am trained as a sex, love, and relationship coach. And have done a lot of work around female energy, masculine, feminine, and women's sexuality. And the reason that I moved into that space, women's sexuality, was for myself to be able to reconnect. I think a lot of women are in sexless marriages. We don't want to be in sexless marriages. Women want sex just as much as men do, and we want to feel pleasure and we want to feel allowed to feel pleasure again, and we want that turn on back in our lives because it can be very much lost as we're raising families. We want to navigate relationships and marriages. Is this still right for me? Like, am I even supposed to still be in this relationship, or how do I reclaim it and bring the spark back?
Mhm.
And, we've all got sort of intensely intricate reproductive systems that need support and need wisdom, sometimes outside of either inside the medical health system or outside the medical health system. And there's a lot of stuff now around HRT and menopause and things that are coming through. So the other thing to just point out is that, most of the people on the planet taking antidepressants are women. Right? Like,
Mm,
women are very
that's
repressed,
interesting.
very suppressed, and we need the antidepressants because the reality is we're not living our truth. We're meant to be in circles. We're meant to be connecting with other women. We're meant to be feeling the love and the community and creating the love and the community around us, and we're not able to do that because we're isolated in these tiny little nuclear family units. So
Yeah.
women are the majority takers of antidepressants, and also the majority of the, I guess, genders that has, and this is generally speaking, but undergone sexual trauma or trauma and lack of safety in some way in our nervous systems.
Yeah.
So, really importantly, like leaving aside all the love and the nurture that we naturally want to give to people, we actually really need to go in and deeply start to heal our trauma and our lack of safety that we've felt for much of our lives and our sexual trauma. and our
Mm.
shame, our deep shame about being women. And women can only do that for women. It's very hard for men to come into the space and help us to heal from a lot of the pain that has come down through generations and ancestry from men. By the way, anyone who's listening, not a man hater, men are we need men. We need
Of
men to
course we
heal.
do.
We love our husbands. We need men to heal, and men need to be helping men heal, and women need to be helping women heal so that
Yeah.
we can bring more of a balance back to rather than a great way that I heard this explained the other day is that bringing matriarchy back, so that we have less patriarchy and more matriarchy, isn't about women taking over. It's about bringing the balance of the masculine and the feminine back. And just like a bird that only has one wing and it can only fly not very well at all with one wing, it's
Mm.
the feminine needs to come back to bring the other wing back into the world so that it can fly, more
Yeah.
equally, and equality being bringing the gifts that we both bring to the planet.
We talk about equality, and I was just thinking the only time you ever hear it spoken about is more on, I guess, a work front, about, you know, equal pay.
The masculine front.
Yeah. And it's like, well, like you said, there's more than just that. It's like we really need to work towards that, don't we? Becoming more equal in more than just a career, in everything that we do in life.
Yeah, and, I think it's really about feminism is starting to change. So feminism up until this point has brought us so far. It's really helped us to get respect and equality in so many ways in so many parts of the world. Not everywhere, by the way. Of course, we know there are countries where women are still hugely repressed. For us, we're very fortunate. Feminism has really helped us to be able to get on an even playing field with the respect and the equality. But what we had to do to get that is we had to embody masculine energy. We had to reject our femininity and our feminine gifts and put them in a basket that isn't seen to be as valuable, like the mother and the caretaker and the nourisher and, those natural gifts that we have. We've had to keep doing those, but really focus on providing, protecting, bringing an equal share of support in a masculine energy to the family. And so I think a lot of women are burnt out. If women our natural essence is feminine for most women. So if women are embodying masculine energy, it's very taxing on our bodies. We're not supposed to be showing up every day to work with the same energy. We don't have the same energy as men. We have different cycles throughout the month of energy. So men wake up every morning and they have a burst of testosterone, they have lots of energy, it gets them through a work day, and then they slow down at the end, and then they get up the next day and they go again in that consistent way. Whereas women, we're operating on a 28-day cycle. So we might wake up one day and just feel exhausted because of where we are in our cycle. But then the following week, we've got this burst of energy. When we're ovulating, we can get all of this stuff done. And then after that, it starts to fall away again. So we're not actually, our biology is not actually built for the consistency of 9 to 5, get up every day, do the same thing, exercise in the same way, have the same routine. We're supposed to be quite inconsistent. And so what's not happening is we're not honoring that. And I think the new wave of feminism is let's honor the gifts that the feminine has and be okay with the inconsistency in our emotions and our energy and our moods, and see that that's actually part of us being able to reproduce on the planet and not a flaw in our character. And also, just to add, the gifts of being the stay-at-home mum or, the person that is caring, to actually have more equality in the value that is placed on that. as compared to, I think there's a lot of women who just wanted to be stay-at-home mums, but felt that they needed to be back out there in the workforce to keep, being able to go on the holidays or pay the mortgage so I think these women's circles are really just going to be about us doing what you and I are doing right now and giving each other a space to actually speak this stuff and share what we're feeling deep in our hearts about what it means to be women.
Yeah, and I also think because we tend to open up to people we know, right? That's just a natural thing that we do as humans. But I think there's something special about being in a space with people you don't know. And I think that's where the magic happens because you don't know me, I don't know you, but what we could actually exchange could be something so powerful. And I think that's why I'm so excited about it because it's just really all about holding space and sharing. So, what I wanted to ask you is I think it would be nice to maybe just give our listeners a bit of an example of what they can expect because if people don't fully understand what being in a women's circle is all about, I don't want people to start thinking, oh, it's going to be this woo woo thing. It's not about that. So yeah, like what's your take on what do you think it's going to be about?
Yeah, well, very casual, very informal, not
Yeah.
something that people need to feel is curated to the point where, it feels inauthentic. But I imagine that we'll bring women together and we'll have a structure of the flow of how the circle might go, which might be somebody shares something, or maybe I have a topic that I want to talk about, or you have a topic that you want to talk
Yep.
about, just some real life experiences. I can lead a little meditation to drop everyone's nervous systems into that ritual space and really just sharing, how we're feeling in a specific time in our life and who has wisdom that they can bring to whatever someone's share is. But it can be whatever. I think what I imagine is that it's organic and what women are really good at doing is actually pulling something together at the last minute. Like if you see a bunch of women suddenly go, "Oh, we need to pull a meal together really quickly." Everyone's in there doing all of these different things and suddenly you have this beautiful meal on the table that wasn't even planned. And so I imagine the women's circle to be a little bit like that. Like we're all going
Yeah,
to
that's
turn up.
beautiful.
Yeah, we're all just going to
Yeah.
produce something at the end of it that we've created.
And I think, like I said before, well, I see it as I'm just so excited about it actually because like I said before, I would have loved something like this a few years ago, but it's just a space. I For me, connection is everything. Female connection is very important to me. It's what gets me through. And especially through times of uncertainty and when I'm going through something really hard, I definitely gravitate more to females. And that's where I want to offer this space to women who may not have a big community. They might be feeling isolated. I get it. It's hard to put yourself into a situation where you don't know anybody. I completely understand that. But know that it's going to be a really lovely, safe space that you will be welcomed and you don't have to share initially if you don't want to ever. But I do believe you will get something from this. And I can't wait to experience that with others as well. So yeah, I'm a bit like you, I don't want it to be curated. I want it to organically just evolve and grow and see where it takes us. It's exciting. I think for me it's connection. It's just
Yeah.
being around other women and just yeah, just sitting in it and really enjoying it because there's nothing better. Honestly, I it's weird when you're younger, you don't think about it. I think about, yeah, I've got friends and whatever else. But now as I'm older, female connection, there's just something so powerful about it. It really is. And I was listening to this older lady, she must have been in her 90s, and someone stopped her on the street and said, what is it that, you love about being your age? And she said, female connection. If I didn't have the females in my life, she goes, I wouldn't be the age I am today. She goes,
Yeah.
that's what kept me going. And I thought, that's so powerful. So, Joe, let's do this. Got nothing to lose. I'm
It's gonna
excited.
be it's gonna be beautiful, and I think the the whole intention behind it is really support and love, which everybody needs.
Absolutely. And obviously, we are in the Sydney area. So, nice. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll have more circles everywhere. But yeah, we're going to start with our area, obviously. So, like Joe said, just stay tuned. We'll have some details and we'll take it from there. Well, Joe, I always end my episodes with a quote. Can you please share a quote that you love?
Oh, wow, okay.
I've put you on the spot.
You've put me on the spot
You
big
probably
time.
have millions of quotes that you can
Oh my
across.
gosh. Well, I think I do. I'm trying to think of a female one. Here's one of my favorite women's quotes.
Yeah.
Women who step into their pleasure step into their power. And this is a beautiful quote by Regina Thomas Hauer, who is a woman that I follow who wrote an incredible book called Pussy. And And I highly recommend all women on this podcast get a copy of this book, Pussy.
Okay.
And if that word makes you recoil and feel a little bit uncomfortable, then you absolutely need to read this book. It's
Okay.
probably my favorite book I have ever read. It's the book that started me down the path of women's sexuality. And I really, reading this book, felt seen and heard for the first time in my life as a woman. And
Wow.
so, it's really all about our pleasure, getting back to the reality that this part of our anatomy, this part of our body that actually gets shamed from the time that we are
Mm,
young girls.
yeah.
A lot of the reason the word pussy came about is because it's something that men want, right? So it's about reclaiming it as ours, not theirs. It's
Yeah.
our pleasure, not their pleasure. And so women who step into their pleasure step into their power. And
Love
I
that.
really do think it's true. And part of the women's circles, we can have so much fun in these women's circles too. We can talk about pleasure, we can talk about sex, we can talk about our bodies, our shame, everything we've been holding on to. And one of the things that Regina Thomas Howard talks about in her events is that she'll be standing up on the stage in front of hundreds of women and she'll say, "What did you call your private parts growing up?" And there will be, 100 different names for it that, or my coochie or my hoochie or my, whatever, and all these different
Yeah.
names. And for men, it's like, well, men have two. It's like I have a dick or a penis, right? And it's just a given. But women, there's like this shame behind what are we even going to call it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we also call it a vagina when actually it's a vulva. So we're not even
Yeah.
the correct scientific name to our private parts. And so it's just this incredible shame that sits behind who we are as women, the the part of our anatomy that actually birthed every human being onto the planet and is therefore arguably the most powerful piece of anyone's anatomy on the planet that doesn't even get to have a name. And so I envisage as part of these circles, women, having sometimes conversations about love and trauma and all of these things that we want to experience. And sometimes we're going to get down and dirty and have some really hilarious conversations about sex and sexuality and, feeling
I just want to say,
the
don't
feeling.
worry, we're not going to be sitting in a circle naked anyway.
No, no, no.
If anyone
We're not going to be
is,
naked. We're not ready. We're not ready for nude yoga.
Well, what do they say? Mirroring. What is it like? Putting the mirror down there and looking.
Oh,
at
no,
yourself?
no.
Don't worry,
No.
ladies.
We're
We're not
not
doing anything like
we're
that.
not gonna scare you, not scare you off. It's just
No.
actually it's very empowering when we can start to actually just talk about it. So,
For sure.
you don't if you're listening and you don't like the sound of that, you don't have to come to that particular
No.
circle. But
No.
if you are listening to it and it does make you feel uncomfortable, it is one of the things that women need to get together and really heal. Like, it's arguably a really important part of who we
Yeah.
are and how we heal. So,
And also,
fun.
I always say remain curious in life because by being curious, you're learning, you're opening your mind to new things. So come and be curious with us. You're going to
Yeah, we're learning too.
Cool.
I'm
Absolutely.
still learning, you're still learning. We're not
Mm,
This is the thing, the circle isn't about us preaching from the mountaintops. It's about
yeah.
us holding the space for everyone to learn together. Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, well, stay tuned, guys. And yeah, I can't wait. See you in the circle, Joe.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Your Second Act. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could rate and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to me.